Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu, brothers and sisters. You're listening to Zed on the drive time this evening. Well, it's a bit of a cloudy day today. We've had some rain and plenty of road rage incidents here on Evington Road today. Just lack of patience, lack of patience. One extra traffic light put on the road and everybody goes berserk. Just amount of people out there that are absolutely cannot wait at the light for the light to turn red. These are temporary lights. Of course, they take longer to turn from red, green, or to amber. Of course, some of the temp lights, they don't have the amber. They just have a red and a green. So that's the society we live in. And people lose patience and have a little bit of a mental experience. And of course, most of you in the community will just look at mental health as being somebody who's difficult or troublesome. But of course, in reality, there is more to it than meets the eye. And I have here today with me a wonderful guest here joining me today in the studio. Well, not in the studio, he's on the Zoom. But you know how it is on the drive time when you're with Zed. You are sitting in my lounge and I'm sitting in your lounge. And we are engaging at a level never to be experienced before. So, Mohammed, how are you this morning, this afternoon, this evening? Can you hear me, Mohammed?
Me. Yeah, I can hear you.
Of course, Mohammed, we also have a Mohammed in the studio here. So when I say the name Mohammed, both of them were a little bit confused as to which one I was referring to. But Mohammed, if you'd like to introduce yourself to the good people of Leicester.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Muhammad Muhassan Khan, so you can call me Muhassan Zed. I was born in Bangladesh 37 years ago, and I came to the UK when I was 1 year old. I've had a good life, alhamdulillah. I've got a big family, family of 10 of us, and a multitude of nephews and nieces. I was educated here. I've got a degree in English and politics. And then I started a master's degree in journalism, but I became mentally unwell for the first time. So I was unable to finish my course. So for the past 13 years, I've lived with mental health difficulties, mental health problems. And I've been held in hospitals altogether 7 times. 7 times, and in total, I've been held in hospitals for about 7 years. All I want to say is that there's no shame whatsoever in having a mental illness. It's physical, whether it's a physical illness, whether it's a mental illness, it's all from Allah Ta'ala. And as believers, we accept what's written for us in our taqdeer, written for us in our fate. And I'm a mental health advocate. I try to fight against stigma. I try to fight against taboo. And I try to raise awareness however I can.
Of course, Mohammed, it's kind of a problem that today in our younger generation, teenagers, right, at the beginning of their lives are beginning to become independent and they're meeting new people and they have this start of a mild form of depression, which then leads on to what we would say mental illness. Like earlier on, I said that we have, people will understand it to be difficult or someone who's troublesome and will very quickly label it as a person who's having some mental health issues. But just run us through the journey, like a typical teenager, what you have experienced with the people that you work with.
All I want to say is that I started blogging 1 year ago now. I started blogging after the first lockdown started, and the way that how that came about was quite interesting because I started doing research into mental health in the BAME community in the UK, and I found that there's a scarcity of resources. There's not much information out there. There's not many research taking place. There's no books written about it. But if you look at some of the kind of statistics, like risk of psychosis in Black Caribbean groups is estimated to be nearly 7 times higher than the white population.
And why is that? What's the reason for that?
Well, some of the one of the potential reasons is poverty, crime, um, and many of the factors. Genetics comes into it, chemical imbalance in the brain, and obviously within the Muslim community, there's a tendency to attribute um, all mental illness with jinn, evil eye, black magic. But all I say is that, yeah, as a Muslim, I believe in these things, but not every single case of mental health problems is linked to jinn, evil eye, or black magic.
So the elements that they can be biological, they can be psychological, and even sometimes social, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
And all are extremely important for all of you listening in right now. And of course, all of you listening in at home right now, you may have had an experience. You may know a friend, a sister, a brother, a relative, and you will have, hopefully today, we can all ask questions to Mohammed, and we can all be having a better understanding. And as me and Mohammed were talking earlier on, there was a gentleman in the studio, and immediately he started to ask Mohammed a question. Of course, that went on for a little while, and we were not able to come to any conclusion because I said, look, we'll have to pick this up separately after the program. So what I'm trying to say is everybody out there knows someone who is afflicted in some shape, form or manner. Is that right, Mohammed?
Yeah, very, very much so. I just wanted to say, in our community, the Muslim community, just in the UK, not talking about South Asia or Middle East, but just in the UK, there's so much prejudice, there's so much stigma, there's so much taboo about this very important and very relevant topic. Um, Basically, from what I've read and from what I've come across, like a person standing in the community is affected if they find out that they've got a relative who's got mental illness or they have a mental illness. And there's actually research that's being carried out that people who've had mental illness, it's harder for them to get married because the potential spouse will say, well, I don't want to marry someone who's mental. I don't want to marry someone who's not going to be able to raise the kids properly, look after the kids properly, look after me properly. So it's like a widespread thing that it's really hard to get married once you've had a mental illness, especially if it's recurring, if it comes and goes, if it comes and goes. So it's quite sad and quite unfortunate. But also, the younger generation are a bit more open to causes of mental illness because mental illness can be caused by jinn, it can be caused by genetics, it can be caused by trauma, it can get caused by a chemical imbalance. It has so many of a variety of causes that it could be. So the younger generation are quite a bit more open-minded about this. I think maybe that's because of Western education, but I don't know. I can't say concisely. Um, but the elder generation, the older generation, to them, mental illness is always equals spiritual reasons, like jadoo, evil eye, jealousy. So every case of someone having depression or someone not being successful in life, someone who hallucinates, goes through hallucinations. Like one of the symptoms of schizophrenia is hallucination, and hallucination is basically when you see, hear, smell, or taste something that other people can't see, taste, or hear, and it's all in your own mind. Me personally, like I've mentioned earlier, I've been sectioned and held all together on separate occasions, amounting to about 7 years. And I've met some great people. I've met some great members of staff. I've met some great patients. I've met some amazing people, on my journey. Uh, I was in hospital with an ex-lecturer. I was in hospital with a guy who used to earn 28 grand a year before he became unwell. So it can happen to anybody from any background, and it's not a sign of weakness. This is my message. Mental illness is not a sign of weakness. It's from Allah, yeah? Don't don't attribute mental illness to weakness. It's wrong.
Okay, the weakness part of it and the illness part of it is not fully understood by everyone. So, all of us listening in to Muhammad right now, when we do come across this, we ourselves, Muhammad, don't know what what to do, what to think, and it's all territory that we have no knowledge or expertise in. So
No.
everybody is blind to this. So what I'd like to ask you, Muhammad, is that if somebody comes across and they have an issue and they have some symptoms, we're not going to know, right? That we will not know if it's a medical issue, what the diagnoses need to be, what needs to be prescribed, what should be should we do in order to help people to restore their lives in a manner that we see as normal. So how do we deal with this?
It's a difficult one, Zed. All I would say is that there's nothing wrong with using the mental health service. There's nothing wrong with approaching psychiatrists and community nurses. There's nothing wrong with approaching psychologists. One interesting thing I came across was um, basically some of the earliest psychiatric wards were established in the Muslim world in Baghdad under the reign of Caliph Harun Rashid. So it's not anything new, psychology and psychiatry within the Islamic framework. So all I'd say is that there's nothing whatsoever wrong with um, approaching the mental health service. But if you want to assure, if you want to like, make sure that it's not spiritual, there's nothing wrong with going to a Raki. A Raki is a person who recites the Quran over somebody, and they basically recite parts of the Quran to the person and keep repeating it, with the hope of if there is a jinn, if there's a evil spirit, with the hope that the Quran will chase it away. So there's nothing wrong with approaching a Raki either, because although I say do approach the psychologist, approach the psychiatrist, but there's nothing wrong
So
whatsoever
what
with
Muhammad is
approaching
trying
a
to
Raki as
explain to
well.
you, all of you listening in right now, sorry to cut you in, Muhammad. Somebody just sent me a text to remind everyone that spirituality can also uh, play a part in mental illness, and we can't discount that. So
No, we
it
can't.
can be biology, can be spirituality, it can also be physical, right?
Yeah,
And we, as a layman or a brother or a sister, mother or father, we always start thinking negative to say, what will people say? Besti ho jayegi.
yeah,
And all
yes,
these negative concoctions start hitting your brain, and
exactly.
you forget about the person who is afflicted, and that person often will display different kind of symptoms one day. Now often, Muhammad, I want to ask you a question. If that person continues to say, you don't understand me, right, how as a layman should we deal with that?
I believe in peer support, and peer support is essentially someone who's gone through the problems, someone who's been sectioned and held in hospital, someone who's had to take medication or has to take medication presently. I believe that it's up to people like myself and other people who like-minded people who will approach, or who other people can approach and say, well, this is what's been happening to me. Like for example, hearing voices. I hear voices in my head. Is it a jinn speaking in my head? Should I think that it's a jinn, or is it something else? Can it be? Is it possible that it's something else? And the number of voice hearers is quite surprising, to be honest. A lot of people hear voices. So um, for somebody who's going through these
Okay,
symptoms,
Mohammed, you've gone off track to my question.
yeah,
I have to interrupt you there. Well, the question was that
yeah,
if a person afflicted will say, you don't understand me,
yeah,
you're not listening to me,
yeah,
and they have this repetitive mode in which they continually will keep saying that. So how are we to deal with that?
I mean, along with
Without
peer
going
support,
down that road of what you
peer
mentioned
support.
earlier about
Well,
the Iraqi and the jinn and etc.
um, I'd say education is very important because before I started looking into these things, I was a loss. I didn't realize what was happening to me. I didn't realize that other people go through the same things. I didn't realize that it's quite common. And I started reading books about it, articles about it. I've written a few articles myself about these kind of stigma in the Muslim community and things like this. So education is very important, not just for the person who's going through difficulties, but their carers, their family members. Um, you know, they're married, they their wife or their husband, because family support is essential to recovery. If you have a strong family support, it's very likely that you'll come through on the other side successfully.
But I've come across cases before where when somebody gets sectioned
Yeah,
and they go through the procedure where they only sort of allow one person, be it the brother, the father, mother, or sister, or husband, or wife, to come and visit the patient. And they don't encourage that everybody in the family, you know what us Asian people are like, if you remember back in the day when your uncle came from Bangladesh or Pakistan and 59,000 relatives came to visit him, or when we're in hospital, right? How many people come along to
yeah,
come see you? And when we have a child born, and before that child is even completed his birth, the boxes of laddus are going around throughout our community. So it happens, doesn't it?
it does happen. Yeah,
So
I
now,
mean,
when somebody has a mild form of mental illness, they go through depressive episodes. All of you who are listening in right now, sometime in your journey of life, you will have come across people and they get severe, even to a point of breakdown, Mohammed.
yeah, yeah,
And
exactly.
it starts as mild, medium, and then severe, right?
Severe,
And when they do recover, that journey of recovery is very, very, very intense because so many things have to happen now. If you mentioned earlier on that family support, but when you're sectioned, they only allow one person. The reason they do that, as I was told by one of the specialist doctors, is that if so many people will come and visit, then they will have the wrong stimulation. The patient will have the wrong stimulation.
right? Okay. I mean, I'm not really sure about this rule that you just mentioned because uh, over the years, as many times I've been sectioned and held, uh, they never actually restricted my family from coming.
I see that
Um,
this is the question I'm asking because I'm asking you questions where a listener would have sent a text in, and
yeah.
I'll be reading that text and asking the question on his behalf.
Oh,
That
okay.
the
Yeah.
question was that if all the relatives or all the friends
Yeah.
and the circle they would come to see that person when they're sectioned, then you're saying that it's good for the person who's been sectioned.
Well, obviously, it varies individual to individual. For myself, I hated being in hospital. I hated to be forcefully detained, and I hate to be away from my family members. So when my family members arrived with laddu and different kinds of food, I used to look forward to it. But like you said, there might be someone else who, because they're so sensitive, going through such a hard time, they probably don't want a big gang of people coming into their room or coming to see them in the hospital. And there's the two main sectionings, the section 2 and section 3. With a section 2, you can be held for up to 28 days just for assessing you. And if after the assessment they find you to have a serious condition, they change that into a section 3. And on a section 3, they can keep you for up to 6 months for treatment. And
So
then
section one, when they actually section you, that's called section one, is it?
no, no, no. Section 2, of the Mental Health Act. I think, if I'm not wrong, it's 1984 Mental Health Act. According to those are the two main sections that I use, although there are many other sections. The two main ones are Section 2 and Section 3. And these are the ones that I personally was held under. When I was first detained 13 years ago for my first time, I was held under Section 2 in Stockport. And at the time, I was actually studying for my MA in journalism. And unfortunately, because of becoming unwell, I was detained and I was held in hospital for at least 8 months, 9 months. So initially, I was held under Section 2, and then after a month, it got changed to a Section 3. And with the Section 3, they can keep you in hospital by force for up to 6 months. And then after that, every 6 months, they can keep lengthening it.
I see. So this is quite intense, because people out there who have experienced, one of the text messages I've received is just a friend who went through a mild form of depression, which ended up as being mental illness. So what he's asking is that if we do get better aware and we have more knowledge, we can be able to assist somebody and guide them in the right direction, isn't it? Very early.
Exactly.
So how do we go create more awareness to the wider community? Because again, life is supposed to be very simple, but today we have a very complicated consciousness around this mental illness, don't we?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, I've got a lot to say about that. What I believe is, not only do mental health professionals, they have to learn more about Islam. They have to learn more about Muslim culture, build trust with the Muslim community, so that, because I also believe that community leaders and imams, they need to learn more about mental illness and spread a positive message to their congregants, and they should become vehicles for raising awareness and educating the community.
So we're basically saying that we need icons of change management in the way we deal with this mental illness, yes?
Very much so.
And you, Mohammed, are an icon of change management, aren't you? Because you recently was commended for some of your work that you've been doing. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Okay, so like I mentioned earlier, I started the blog. It was just a simple, basic blog, started 1 year ago. And I've covered a variety of subjects, including depression, schizophrenia, my experiences with the mental health service, stigma in BAME communities, psychology, psychiatry in Islam, suicide, and trauma. These are the kind of topics that I've covered in the blog. And with the blog, I mean, my brother is a web designer, so he helped me to design the blog. But I wrote and edited all the articles in there. And there were 56 nominees for the Mental Health Blog Award. And from 56 nominees, 7 were shortlisted. And from those 7 who were shortlisted, I came number 1, and I received that award because of my kind of attempts at fighting stigma and fighting against taboo and raising awareness and teaching people that it's okay to be unwell. It's like a physical illness. It's from Allah, and our deen, our religion teach. This is for Muslims, but I campaign for non-Muslims as well. But for Muslims, I say, whether it's a physical illness or it's a mental illness, it's from Allah Ta'ala. Yeah. You have to turn to Him first and foremost. But at the same time, you need medication, or you need therapy, or you need to see someone like a Raki or pious person to ask for their du'as and ask for guidance from them. And I believe that there should be khutbahs. Friday khutbahs should also take place. About discussing this kind of relevant topic.
Of course, a lot of people, especially a lot of young people nowadays, when they get afflicted, they become overwhelmed, and all the more reason why all of us in the community, in our families, should become very much aware and learn how they're going to deal with that, because the stigma part of it is holding us back, isn't it, Mohammed?
It's holding us back a lot. I mean, like, what I just want to say is that, like, at one point, the earliest kind of psychiatric wards were established in the Muslim world. So we should have been the most enlightened of all the people. But the reality is we've become the opposite of enlightened. We become narrow-minded. We become judgmental, and it's not a appealing thing. But obviously, even in this country, in the UK, going back like 20, 30, 40 years, lobotomies were commonly used. ECT, electroconvulsive therapy, was commonly used. But there's been so much change, so much awareness has been raised, and now we have a system in place which is good, not perfect, but good. But if you compare to, like, for myself, there is no mental health system in Bangladesh. There is no mental health system in Pakistan. There may be the odd hospital here and there, but as a whole, there's no system in place,
But
and that's why these horrid.
right now, we have to be focused on what is happening here in the UK.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
one of the frightening things that you have put forward today is that the Afro-Caribbean and the Asian community are absolutely hitting very high figures. Yes?
very much so. I mean, like I mentioned earlier, Black Caribbean groups, risk of psychosis in that group is 7 times higher than the white population.
Yeah.
There's another fact here that I've got written down. Detention rates under the Mental Health Act during 2017-18 were 4 times higher for people in the Black or Black British group than those in the white group. And one last fact, findings from the last Count Me In census found that the number of people in the Asian or Asian British groups who spent time compulsorily detained in hospital rose by approximately 9% from 2005 to 2020.
Of course,
But like I mentioned,
Mohammed, again, a response to a text that has just come in. You are listening right now to Radio Haj. You're listening to Zed on the Drivetime program. We are having a discussion with Mohammed from Stockport, and he's talking to us about mental health and the impact in our Afro-Caribbean and the Asian communities. And a very interesting discussion, because many people have had experience or know somebody who has had an experience. So I want to ask you a question, Mohammed. One of the questions that has come to us from one of the listeners is, how has COVID affected mental health during lockdown, during the pandemic?
During the pandemic, I don't have any facts and figures with me at the moment, but I do believe mental health cases have risen exponentially because of the isolation, because of the fear, because of the paranoia that, I might get this illness, I might die, I could potentially get the illness tomorrow and die. So it's risen exponentially, and it's understandable as well. And if I'm not wrong, I read somewhere that especially among the younger generation, like mid-teens onward, the cases of mental health have risen because of that. And
now, all of us, if we do have more awareness about this, we will be able to assist, guide, help someone, because often when a person is in this kind of situation, they even start to regress, don't they, Mohammed?
They can regress, definitely.
And they are not prone to seek help because they worry that they don't want to be sectioned, they don't want to be getting habitually addicted to any form of medication. And there are so many taboos involved here where you and I, we're laymen, we don't know. We don't have a clue. And we need support from expertise from a lot of the doctors, psychiatrists, even psychologists out there who are experts in this particular field. So the message here is that when you have an issue with your eyes, you don't go to a dentist, you go to an optician. Is that right, Mohammed?
Very much.
Otherwise, we'll get the wrong advice and we'll be led astray. Like Muhammad mentioned earlier on, that often in our community, in the Asian community, we very much quickly, we had some horrific cases here last year, Muhammad, on the radio when a guest joined us, and he told us about a case where a young girl who was afflicted with a very mild form of mental illness, and she was sectioned by the family into her bedroom, where she remained practically for the next 5 years of her life.
No.
Right? And this is how bad it can get. And that young girl at the age of 18 has suffered the trauma of that afterwards. And this is how serious it can be when you do the wrong diagnosis or stigma or culture or tradition that you have heard about and you have done absolutely wrong.
Yeah.
And this is a pure irreparable damage, isn't it?
Very much so. If I could just add something, Zed, I've heard many other horror stories of people being violently assaulted by so-called, spiritual doctors, if you want to call them, and they routinely. It's not as bad in this country, but in other places, they routinely use violence to try and expel the demon, to try and expel the jinn. And I've looked a little bit into what jinn are according to Islam. Well, we believe that they were created thousands of years before human beings were created. We believe that Iblis or Satan, he was from the jinn. We believe that they're made from smoke. They're made from smokeless fire, and they can travel vast distances.
So guys, you're listening in to Zed on the Drive Time today, and it's Wednesday, a little bit of a cloudy day today here, right? We're talking about mental health here with Mohammed from Stockport, and Mohammed, he has done a lot of work in this particular field. He's also himself come across his own experience in his journey of life with mental health. And of course, Mohammed, mental health has a lot of relatives, doesn't it? Which are called depression, stress, anxiety, low self-esteem, anger, relationships, grief, and of course eating disorder as well, where the pursuit of perfectionism has led to many people becoming anorexic. And these are so many factors that we all have to be aware of, Mohammed, which are absolutely shocking, aren't they?
Very shocking.
And that was a list of just 8 things that I went through, and then all of them, any one of them could lead to some form of mental health. And there's also borderline personality disorder that I discovered last year, right? And there's much more as well, isn't there, than that? I've only gone through 9 there that could lead to a form of mental health.
Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, you didn't mention schizophrenia. There's bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, bipolar, depression. There's a variety of different illnesses, potential illnesses. I myself have suffered from schizophrenia. I've suffered from psychosis in the past.
Now, Mohammed, as you are speaking, people are sending me a message to ask, what is your definition of schizophrenia?
Well, schizophrenia, it has there's two types of symptoms. There's positive symptoms, and then there's negative symptoms. Positive symptoms include things like hearing voices, hallucinations, auditory hallucinations, and negative symptoms are the opposite, where a person becomes lifeless. They have no zest for life. They just lose interest in everything. So I myself have been diagnosed with schizophrenia, and I've experienced a lot of these different symptoms myself. Trust me, it's not a nice place to be.
And another text here asking a question is if you can explain psychosis to us. This particular psychosis the person is asking about is, I'm not sure it's spelled correctly, but it's
Post-traumatic.
or post-traumatic psychosis, yes.
Well, if I'm not wrong, as in, you have to remember, I'm still a layman myself. So this is the little that I know is from my own reading and my own research and my own article writing. The post-traumatic psychosis, if I'm not wrong, is basically caused by some kind of trauma in someone's life. Sometimes it might be, abuse, physical and sexual abuse that eventually leads onto it. Or it could be some other kind of trauma, such as grief, or losing a family member, or losing a wife or husband, or something like this. I can't really elaborate more than that.
Of course, again, we will be able to point you in some directions, signpost you.
Exactly.
But sometimes you need individual counseling, and sometimes you need counseling as a family also. And there are people out there, Mohammed, who are expert at supporting this, aren't there?
Very much so. I mean, if people want to learn more about the different kind of mental illnesses, mind are very good. Mind are fantastic.
Of course, I'll ask our producer to put the telephone contact of the studio right now on the screen. And if anybody wishes to ask a question, they can call in and discuss their particular situation, which is, you can call us in the studio on 0116 482 2086, or you can text us on 07748 855 055. You've been listening here today to Mohammed from Stockport and Zed from Leicester on Haj Radio, where we have been discussing this topic of mental health. Of course, this is a very important part of our community. Community development is all about our well-being, and well-being and mental health are totally connected. Are they not, Mohammed?
Very much so, Zed. Very much so.
So this is where all of us have to work together, learn from each other, and look at every day as a day of knowledge. From when we wake up in the morning, Muhammad, we say to everybody, first thing we do is what? We say, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Alhamdulillah, I have one more day to do some good. And this is a great start for the day, and we should all be able to adhere to that. Of course,
Zed,
Mohammed, we are almost
Zed,
coming to the end of our program, so I would like you to do a little bit of a conclusion, right? And we will then, after this particular program, we will be joining Ustad Muhammad Aratan, and he will give us much needed knowledge on Islam, and the knowledge of wisdom can never be discounted. And if you're able to listen in, Muhammad, also from Stockport, you can share some good wisdom from Muhammad Aratan.
I will do, inshallah. Yeah, so I'm 37 years old. For 13 years, I've suffered from mental health challenges. I've met some amazing people. I've gone through a lot of grief. I've known 2 or 3 people who've committed suicide because of mental illness. I believe that we all have to become mental health advocates. We all have to have conversations about mental health. I also believe imams and community leaders need to make this a pressing issue that has to be handled. And through them, we have to educate the community regarding what mental illness is. I don't say that we just trust psychology and psychiatry. I also believe in jinn. I also believe in evil eye and jadoo and black magic. So it's very important that when there's a need, when there's a necessity, that we approach mental health professionals. They've spent years and years and years studying these things, so they'll be able to guide us. They'll be able to signpost us to how to possible recovery. I just want to add that our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his enemies actually accused him of being mentally unwell because he said he was receiving revelation from Allah. So this stigma thing is not anything new. It's been around for a very long time. So if, as Brother said, am I allowed to mention my blog? My link.
Yes, you can mention your link, and if anybody would like to go onto your blog and they can pick up some tips from you, and can they communicate with you directly?
Yeah, they can leave comments, and if they want two-way conversation, they can ask for it, and I'll contact them.
Yes, of course.
So,
And of course, you didn't finish telling me about the award that you received.
okay, the award, it was a national competition. There were people from America, people from Kenya who were part of the competition. There were about 2,000 votes cast altogether. And from 56 nominees, I made it to the final 7. And then on Saturday, I received the actual award in my category, which was Blogger of the Year, Mental Health Blogger of the Year. I'm really happy about this. I want to thank my brother. I want to thank Heathfield House. I want to thank Pennine Care. And I want to thank my family. And I dedicate the win to my dad, my late father, Rahmatullahi alayhi.
Of course, for those of you who don't know and you haven't been watching the Olympics, mental health has taken a top role at the Olympics in order for us all to be aware of. Of course, you'll also not probably be aware of that even our British champion boxer, heavyweight champion boxer, Tyson Fury, he had also gone through bouts of mental health, and this is something everybody should be aware of. So I'd like to say Jazakallah to all of you listening in, and Mohammed also, if you could like to just say Jazakallah to everybody.
Jazakallah khair, everybody. Thank you for listening, and I hope I've been able to help you in some little way.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi. We're always here to make a difference, so